Okay, let's talk about something happy, as happy as you can be, with what you know. You said you're a trained economist. That means you have a degree, right?
Well, I'm an Austrian economist.
Oh, okay.
I had this fortune. I went to Humboldt State University.
Very liberal school, I would think.
Oh, if you go to Berkeley, it's too right-wing and oppressive. You go to my school. It's the V.I. Lenin Institute.
So I don't know.
But there's two Austrian economists hiding out in this little burg in Northern California. And I fell under their wing, fell under the thrall early of Austrian economics. And for those of you in the audience who don't know what Austrian economics is that Austrian economics is a subjective methodology of economics that is much more qualitative in its analysis than quantitative. And I would say for the most part, it considers all macroeconomics to be nothing more than a sophisticated academic rationalization of government intervention in the economy. And the Austrian school is a free market school that sees that spontaneous order, imperfect information, and market forces are the best way to ensure liberty instead of the opposite.
So I'll tell you in my redneck language what I just heard you say. Oh, no. Austrian economics is trade without government intervention, right? And
trade between sovereign individuals.
Right. Using something of value. It can't be something that pretends to be a value. It has to be tradable for something.
Just call it a medium of exchange. Whatever is agreed to is
It can't be a fiat currency in a true Austrian economic
It can't
model.
be a fiat currency because fiat currencies are backed by nothing but faith and created out of thin air. And fear and created out of thin air. Whereas there would probably be some kind of specie commodity attached to the medium of exchange so that it is immediately redeemable for that specie if you wish. Okay,
so best case scenario, and I'm of the opinion, and maybe correct me if you think I'm wrong, that the economy is everything and everything else is nothing. Like the way our dollar goes is going to determine everything. Like sometimes I feel like with libertarians, and I don't know if I'm a libertarian or what. I think I'm mostly just a preparedness nut, and maybe I don't know what you want to call it, but what I think is. How do I word this? Luckily, I can edit a lot of my pauses. Money's everything. If the dollar goes...
But money is not the root of all evil.
Power.
The envy for other people's money is the root of all evil.
Right.
Yeah.
So if the dollar... Let's say that... How fast could the... Let's just do the best case scenario. Best case scenario with our dollar. What's the best thing that can happen? As far as the least amount of suffering on our part.
That it'll take years instead of months for it to disintegrate.
It has
That's my statement.
Right, it has to collapse.
Has to collapse.
There's no way around it. They can't do any magic voodoo.
No, because here's a comparison of quantitative easing 2. What quantitative easing 2 is, this injection of, they claim, $600 billion into the economy, is nothing more than Nathan and Bill going to every garage sale we can go to on a given weekend, purchasing all Monopoly game sets, taking all the monies out of there, bundling them up on pallet and plasticizing them, putting plastic over them, put them on C-130s, taking them to Washington, D.C., and then saying to every bank head that we call to D.C., this is our new currency. Whether you like it or not, this is our new currency.
So
there's no rationale.
Theft at the point of the gun.
Well, that's what government is, though.
Right.
Government is theft. Government is force. Government is the threat of force. Government is merely violence.
So there's a lot of Okay, so that's the best case scenario. Is it takes a long time. The worst case scenario would be
tomorrow morning.
Yeah, okay. I know this game. Yeah. So tomorrow, careful this doesn't. Like I said. Okay, so tomorrow, I just read a book called Patriots by
Rawls.
Okay.
Rawls and I are friends. He's a good guy.
Does he really exist? That's a pseudonym, isn't it?
He does, but we met at the SAR show last year.
Oh, when I met you?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I should have hung out with you longer.
You should have. We're going tomorrow.
Oh, yeah?
We might run into him.
Oh, you got my interest there. Yeah. Okay, so... From what I can tell, that guy has pretty much thought of everything. I don't see any flaws in his thinking.
Survivalblog.com.
Right, I love survivalblog.com.
Great place to go.
It's almost too much information. It makes me feel puny and ill-prepared.
You know what? Every
time
I go to his blog, which I so admire the work that Jim has done, I feel inadequate. Mm-hmm. And he always pokes new holes
in
what I thought was a good but imperfect plan. So yeah.
You could never be done prepping. It has to be a lifestyle. It can't
none of us make that much money.
There's no completion. Right.
Yeah, none of us make that much money because what he's essentially asking us to do is take a lifetime's income in both skill sets and monies and get it ready now.
Uh-huh.
And that's impossible.
Right.
Jim, if you're listening to this, I'm not dissing you.
I'll forward it to him. At least I think I know how to email the mystery man. What do you think about it? Is that possible? Could we have that kind of Mad Max scenario just from the collapse of the dollar? Are we that fragile? Because we've seen economies collapse recently.
I think we're incredibly fragile. I think the reason why this greatest depression versus the Greater Depression in the 30s is so much scarier is because urban folks pride themselves on their lack of self-sufficiency. Urban enclaves in the United States are probably where I would guess, and we could stipulate this by doing some research, but I'm guessing 75% of the population lives in urban, ex-urban, suburban areas in these United States, priding themselves on a lack of self-sufficiency because all they need is condiments in their refrigerator because they can eat out every night. In the 1930s, people were much closer to their sources of food and people simply worked harder. You and I have done an Appleseed program on occasion. And I like to go back to that history because at one point in the investment and siege of Boston, the British thought that in 48 hours they would go out and take on the rebels. Well, and this is well after April 19th, by the way. This is about a year about Bunker Hill time, about 8 months into it. Well, what the rebels did was they built those siege works around Boston and New York in less than 48 hours. They just did it. But why is that? It's because when it came to backbreaking labor, that's what they did. It's simply what they did. They from dawn till dusk, you put a shovel in their hand, they're working. They don't take breaks, they're working. They're used to hard work like that. In the 1930s, maybe not as hard working, but closer to their food. They probably knew a cobbler, somebody who made shoes. Everybody probably knew how to sew because they had to for hand-me-downs, things like that. Everybody was much closer to those things that helped them to sustain themselves from Maslow's hierarchy and even a few pleasurable things. Because, of course, music was popular, that kind of thing.
What was that theme music that just went off on your phone?
Let's not go there.
Okay. All right, so okay, we're ill prepared.
So I think we're far worse.
I think most people would admit that. You know, if you say, "Hey, look, what would happen if this happened?" They're like, "I don't know. I would become a looter overnight." They know it. I have friends who that is their survival. You know, I got lots of guns. I'm going to become a warlord or a predator. They like to even be able to make that mental stretch so easily. You know,
those are people with no moral foundation or underpinnings. And of course they will meet...
But it's not uncommon. It's seen
they will
as
meet resistance.
Acceptable.
You know, there's three types of folks out there. There's sheep, there's wolves, and there's sheepdogs.
Right.
The sheep are the majority of the American population. I would say the world population. The wolves are the parasitic and looter classes in our government, both government employees, rulers, and bureaucrats, and all of their parasitic classes that rely on them for handouts, checks, food stamps. You name whatever the government subsidy may be.